Hello everyone. Today I'll be presenting on the research study by Jonas R. Kunst and David L. Sam titled Expanding the Margins of Identity, a Critique of Marginalization in a Globalized World. This study challenges traditional views on marginalization and explores the role of global identity in shaping self-concept and adaptation of ethnic minorities in Europe. By the end of this presentation, we'll discuss whether global identity can be a viable alternative to national and ethnic identities in an increasingly globalized society. Marginalization has traditionally been viewed as the least preferred and most problematic acculturation strategy for that in a globalized world. Marginalized individuals may not lack cultural resources, but instead turn to a global identity. This study specifically investigates whether global identity provides an alternative sense of belonging and resilience against discrimination, focusing on European Muslim minorities. The key questions are: do marginalized individuals develop a stronger global identity? And does this global identity help them adapt better in society? Let's explore these more in detail. The purpose of this study was twofold. First, to examine if marginalized individuals have stronger global identities than those who integrate or assimilate. And second, to analyze whether global identity contribute positively to psychological and sociocultural adaptations. The research hypothesized that marginalized individuals who identify with a global cultural and have similar or even better adaptation outcomes compared to non-marginalized individuals. To understand the study, we need to review the existing research on acculturation. According to Barry's acculturation model, ethnic minorities navigate between four strategies: integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization. While integration is linked one of the best outcomes. Marginalization has typically been associated with negative effects like isolation and low self-esteem. However, recent studies challenge this notion, suggesting that globalization has introduced new identity possibilities beyond the national or ethnic framework. Arnett proposed that globalization fosters identification with a world community, which may serve as a psychological buffer for the marginalized individuals. Kunst and Sam's study builds on these ideas by testing whether marginalized individuals actually develop a stronger global identity, rather than lacking identity altogether. Their study suggests that global identity can provide a cultural framework that enhances well-being, adaptation, counteracting the traditionally negative view of marginalization. The key implication here is that marginalization may not be a passive experience of exclusion, but an active choice of some individuals who do not fit their heritage or host cultures. Now, let's look at how the study was conducted. The researchers surveyed 848 European Muslim minority members across three groups: German Turks, French Maghrebis, and British Pakistanis. These groups were selected because they represent some of the largest Muslim communities in their respective countries and often face discrimination and integration challenges. The study measured participants' marginalization levels, ethnic identity, global identity, and adaptation outcomes using structured surveys. They then used statistical analysis, including multi-group comparisons and structural equation modeling, to identify patterns in how global identity interacts with marginalization and adaptation. So, what did the study find? First, marginalized individuals did not lack identity, but instead had a stronger global identity compared to non-marginalized individuals. Second, those with strong global identities showed better psychological sociocultural adaptations, meaning they experienced lower stress, higher life satisfaction, and similar levels of social adjustment or as non-marginalized individuals. One of the most interesting findings was that global identity helped buffer against negative effects of discrimination. Individuals who faced ethnic discrimination but had strong global identities reported better psychological well being than those who relied only on ethnic identity for support. Now, these findings challenge traditional acculturation theories by showing that marginalization is not necessarily a negative outcome. Instead, global identity can serve as an alternative source of belonging. This has major implications for both policy and education, rather than solely encouraging integration into national culture. Institutions should consider fostering global citizenship as a way to support minorities who feel disconnected from both their heritage and host cultures. For instance, universities and workplaces can promote transnational networks and multicultural experiences that allow individuals to form global identities. This can improve well being and adaptation, especially among populations that struggle with traditional acculturation paths. So, while studies provide valuable insight, there are some limitations to consider. First, the research was cross-sectional. It has only measured participants at one point in time. Longitudinal study would be needed to confirm whether global identity development truly predicts adaptation over time, which is what was needed. Second, the study relied on self-reported surveys, which may introduce bias on how participants perceive their identity and adaptation. Future research should use mixed methods, including interviews and observational studies, to gain deeper insight into the role of global identity in daily life. Finally, while the study focused on European Muslim minorities, the findings may not apply to all marginalized groups. Future research could examine whether similar patterns exist among other populations, such as Latin American migrants in North America, and African minorities in Europe. So, to summarize Constance Sam's challenge, the traditionalist views of marginalization by showing that global identity can be meaningful cultural resources for minorities. Their findings suggest that globalization is reshaping identity formation in ways that provide new pathways for adaptation and resilience. Before we conclude, let's discuss a few key questions. How does globalization shape cultural identity formation among minorities? Can global identity replace national or ethnic identity, or should they coexist? And what challenges might arise in promoting global identity as a coping mechanism? Finally, how might these findings apply to second-generation immigrants? I love to hear these thoughts. I love to hear you guys' thoughts on these points. And here are the references used for this presentation. If you have any further questions, I encourage you to check them out. Thank you for all your attention, and I look forward for hearing your feedback. Thank you very much.